In his presence there is comfort. In his presence there is peace. When we seek the Father's heart, we will find such blessed assurance in the presence of the Lord. Cover me, Lord, with your presence.
Good morning and welcome to Unveiled, a presentation of the Church Street Church of Christ in Lewisburg, Tennessee. Unveiled is simply a one-on-one conversation between Christian people designed to help each of us, as followers of Christ, become more aware of and better respond to the presence of God at work in our daily lives. My guest today is Ebbett Giles, and Ebbett, first of all, thank you just for taking some time out to be with me today.
Thank you. I enjoy it. I think I am anyway.
All right, let's begin with you just introducing yourself to me and to anyone who may be listening. Tell us everything you want us to know about Ebbett Giles.
Well, I'm Ebbett Foster Giles. I'm married to Roger Giles, and on the November the 11th, we'll celebrate our 49th wedding anniversary. We have two boys, Heath, who is married to Jennifer Cathy. She's a local girl. They have three children, Carter and Elise and Evelyn. And he has the youngest, which is kind of ironic. He's the oldest child by 7 years, and he has the youngest grandchild, but just by a few months. And then our second son, Robbie, of course, he attends here at Church Street, and he's married to Laura Sharp. She was from Pulaski, and they have two, Lily and Lakin.
So you have 5 grandchildren.
I have 5 grandchildren, yes.
Okay.
And let's see. I wasn't raised here in Church Street. I come from a long line of churchgoers. I actually have an obituary of my great-grandmother, and it talks about what a Christian woman she was and a member of the Christian church. So it makes me think of Timothy with all his grandparents, and all that. But so my church background goes way back, way further back than I can remember. My mother, very faithful in the church. My father died when I was 2.5.
Oh.
So she never remarried, and church kind of became. I don't know how to put it. Anyway, we were there all the time. Anytime there was a gospel meeting, and back then they went from Monday to sometimes Saturday, and we were there every time. My legs got pinched a lot because I would want to squirm a little bit. But I guess when I was small, I kind of always thought Mama made me go. That I had to go to church. And when I was a baby, we went to Hickory Heights. Brother Dunn preached there then at the time. And then when he left there, we went to Water Street because that's where Ralphine Derryberry, my cousin, her mother and my mother were sisters. And they were big in the church at Water Street. So we went there. And then Neil Anderson was hired here as a youth minister. And I can't remember exactly how old I was, maybe 6, 7 years old. And there wasn't a lot of youth at Water Street, so Mama decided the best thing for us to do is to come up here, because we knew Neil, or my mother did, and so she wanted me to be involved in that kind of thing. So we moved here, and then when Water Street went to Westview, my aunt and uncle came here, so I've been here ever since. Was baptized here. Bill Smotherman baptized me when I was 12. And
now, have you lived in Lewisburg then your whole life?
My whole life. Talking about marriage with Roger. Roger and I married young, and so with my father, when he died when I was 2.5, he had just got offered a job at Redstone Arsenal, and they were getting ready to move to Huntsville. And of course, then he was diagnosed with cancer and passed away and never moved. So that left me here in Lewisburg, and so that's where I've been all my life.
So you mentioned that your mother was very devout, churchgoer
Right.
all your life. So you also grew up in a home where you were coming to church every time the doors were open,
That's
it sounds
right.
like. So clearly you knew from as far back as you can remember about the existence of God and about the church and the Bible and Jesus and all of those things, just like anybody who's been raised in a church-going home. But there had to be at some point, you mentioned that you just assumed you were always going to church because you had to, because that's what your mom insisted on you doing. And that was probably right for a big part of your growing up years. What I'm interested in is when you look back over your childhood and those memories of church going in particular, do you remember either a moment in time or maybe a period of time where you reached a level of maturity where you thought, this is no longer me going to church because my mama makes me, but this is something that I believe? That at what point did you discover for yourself that God was truly real?
Well, I think when you're young, you always think you're indispensable.
Yeah.
That nothing can happen to you.
Right.
And like I said, Roger and I married young. 3 years after we were married, we had a baby girl. And she was born with heart murmur. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can get through this or not. But she lived 6 months. She had open heart surgery and passed away. And Kyle, I guess that's when it all came home to me. Because I realized if I wanted to see her again, that I had to live the life that God wanted me to. And I don't know how people get through that. They don't know God.
Yeah, yeah.
I just don't. But then, I see, like, she was sick for so long, for 6 months. There was other things that were, because the heart, the lungs, kidneys, and all go together. There was different things that were going on. If she had lived, probably would have never had my 2 boys. So, I look at that.
Yeah. God
That's
works in mysterious ways, doesn't he?
He does. He does. And, I knew that God was working in my life before then, but I think that was the turning point for me, that I knew I had to do everything I could to see her again.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry for your loss, but I can see how that would be a traumatic moment that would open your eyes to a different perspective on life. And I personally believe God does that in our lives from time to time, that he uses events that shake us up a little bit. Maybe it's something that was a very positive thing, or maybe to us it was a very negative thing, but things happen that cause us to think, this is bigger than me. And so that's really part of what we're trying to accomplish here today as we talk, is to just look back on our lives and see what are some evidences that God has always been there, maybe at times when we didn't even notice before. And I think one of the things that's interesting, because I have a similar background being raised in the church myself, we always knew that God was real. We believed that from a very early age. But there does come a point where we start to realize that life is on a pathway. And your pathway is different than my pathway, but we're on a pathway to God. And things happen along the way that cause us to have our eyes opened. And in your case, unfortunately, it was a tragedy that opened your eyes. But now I assume that as not just a mother, but a grandmother, enjoying your family, you're able to look back even on those sad times and see the hand of God.
No, yes. Oh, yes. And I think one thing I think of, the older women that have influenced me through this in this congregation. I was invited to Miss Betty Daniels' house one day, and I don't even think Robbie was born. I think because there's 7 years between my boys, and but I was invited to her house for a ladies' day meeting, and something came up and I didn't go. Didn't think it would matter that much. Well, the ladies' day time rolled around, and I went. And somebody said, our crowd was not as good. And they came up to me and they said, "Did you put the advertisements in the paper?" Well, I looked at them with big eyes like, "Well, was I supposed to? I didn't know." And they said, "Oh, yeah, you were nominated that day at Miss Betty Daniels' house. Did nobody tell you?" And I said, "No, nobody told me." But believe you me, I went to every other meeting after that because I wanted to make sure. I felt so bad that I had dropped the ball on my part. And here I am now, chairman of the Ladies' Day. So. But I think of, and also when Heath was growing up and going to camps and advances and all that, I didn't get to go with him that much because, like I said, there was 7 years difference between my boys, and I still had a baby at home. And back then, they wouldn't let you take your children if a guardian went. That just wasn't done. So I never got to go with him that much. But then by the time Robbie rolled around, I got to start going to camps and now, and then I had to stop because we opened our own business, and now we're getting ready to retire, I hope, and COVID hit, yay, and I got to go to camp for another whole year, and so now I've even got Roger going. He's enjoying it too. Yeah. So I can see how, I think back on the ladies that had an impact on me when I was young. I can see Miss Catherine Reynolds. I loved Vacation Bible School. Could not wait till Vacation Bible School because of her lemonade, her Kool-Aid. And it's probably just the same old Kool-Aid we drink now. But to me, when I was a little girl, it tasted so good. And she would make it in these big vats, and I can see her. She didn't stand probably this tall. And she would climb up on this ladder, get this big wooden spoon, and get over in there and stir, and I can still see her. But, it just makes me think, I hope that some of the young people now maybe have some memories of me like that I have of her.
Yeah. So when you first started going to camps, I'm assuming it was because you were being a supervisor, in a sense, for your own son.
Well, yeah. Of course, I never got to stay with the guys. Right.
But, the reason you would go was because he was going, and you were his mother, and you wanted to be experiencing what he was experiencing. But now, Robbie is a grown man and has family of his own, and you still find yourself going to youth camps and enjoying it.
I love it.
What is God up to there, you think?
Well, Kyle, I guess because I have been going, I see there's a need there.
Yeah.
And we've got to bring our young people up. And even though I'm in the kitchen, I'm not teaching. They have to eat. So, I just think.
But what does it do for you? Do you find yourself spiritually encouraged by being there?
I can't wait. And you just look forward to going. And I look forward to the singing at night and, just all the bonfires and crafts and all the different things.
And just the fellowship with other Christians that are there. And I guess what I'm thinking about is, at one time you probably felt somewhat obligated to go as a parent, but now as not needing to go as a parent anymore, you find yourself for your own spiritual fulfillment wanting to go. Now, you're still serving meals and all of that, and you have a task to do, but one of the things you're excited about is something about camp speaks to you spiritually. Your spirit is lifted, and God is working on you, maybe even using some young people to encourage you just as you're wanting to encourage them.
That's true.
So it's always amazing to think about how God is busy working in our lives. At times we don't normally think to see Him.
And I think back on another thing that a way I see that God has directed Roger and I in our life. He worked at Cosmolab, and they had been bought out, and he knew his job was not going to be around very long. He worked in the computer payroll part, and so they were sending that to California. So we decided that I had been working for the newspaper for 25 years, and we decided that place needed a sports store, which we thought sports at the time. We decided, well, okay, we're going to open one. Maybe Roger could work for a year. I could get it started, get it going, and then by that time maybe he could come in. Well, we were supposed to open October 1st, I think it was. By then we already had 2 big orders, and I had quit my job on one Friday, and the next Friday Roger got his pink slip. So we were pretty scared, not knowing what was going to happen. But 22 years later, we're still in business, and God has blessed us. Robbie's come in with us now, and he has blessed us beyond measure in that category. We've always tried to be fair to everybody, and I hope we have. We've tried to, but that just always made me, because I thought after Roger got his pink slip and we started working together, then I could have never done it by myself.
Yeah.
There was no way. And the Lord knew that. So that's why He put him there.
Yeah. It's amazing how things like that work. Even when you're scared, things work out. I got to ask you, why the name Jabbers? Where did that come from?
Oh, me. That's a long story. Well, it's not too long. Roger used to play golf, and they would play a round of golf on Saturdays, and then they'd go in and play some cards or, whatever, and then go play another round of golf, him and his buddies, in the afternoon. So he and one of his buddies decided they'd go fill the golf cart up with gas, and somehow or other they had a radio on, and that was when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was very popular. So it's been many years ago. And the radio announcer pronounced it Kareem Aberjabber instead of whatever it is. So they got to hollering at each other, and Roger would go in and he'd say, "Hey, Aber," and then they'd say, "Hey, Jabber." So it stuck.
Interesting.
And everybody, it just stuck with him. And then he's been in baseball, 50-something years. And everybody in the sports world knew him as Jabber, not as Roger.
Oh.
So when we named it, we thought, well, we better name it Jabbers, because nobody would know what it was if we put Giles on it.
Yeah. That's funny. Okay, well, let's go back then. Let's talk about your life growing up, going through, let's say, your high school years. You mentioned that you worked for the newspaper for a number of years. So
years.
From the time that you were in high school and then beyond high school, what kind of path did your life take?
Well, I've had, I really think I've had a pretty interesting life. Working for the newspaper, you know yourself, you kind of work for the radio station, and even though it's sports, I have.
Did you go directly to the newspaper after high school?
No, well, yes, and then I took some, I did. I went straight to the newspaper, and I worked for the printing part for a good while, and then I went over into the newspaper part, and that's where the interesting thing comes in, because you get to work wrecks and fires, and I've pretty much seen and done it all, it seems like. But I worked my way up. I was associate editor of the newspaper, and I loved it. Probably would have never left, but just, I don't know, that time, which that's kind of funny too. I guess now looking back, like you say, I can see that, because I loved that job. Would have never left it. And with Roger's job being in jeopardy like it was, and us deciding to open the business, I guess God was kind of
Yeah.
leading me that way. And then the newspapers didn't last much longer after that, because internet was coming up. And I mean, our newspaper now, it didn't have, we had lots of advertising and stuff in
Yeah,
ours, but
yeah.
not now. People don't want the printed copy, I guess, anymore.
Okay, so you've mentioned Roger several times. Let's talk about how the two of you met. What role do you think God played in bringing his life path to intersect with your life path, and how did that happen?
I really don't know. Like I said, we married young.
How young were you?
I was 16. He was 19. I went ahead and quit school at the time, took my GED, and then I took some college courses when I started working for the newspaper. And then, of course, Kim was born when I was 19.
Did you know Roger from school, or did you know him from somewhere else?
Back in the days when I went to skating rink and stuff like that, we met there. And and we never really dated a whole lot until maybe that right before we got married. And a lot of people say, well, why in the world did you get married when you were 16? And I said, well, I loved him and wanted to.
Yeah.
And of course, with me being raised in the church, I knew. And my mother had set me down and talked to me a long time. You marry, divorce is not an option for me. So, we've had a lot of hard times. I'm not going to say it's been easy for 49 years, but I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah. So, what about Roger? What was his religious background? Was it similar to yours?
Yes. He was not as faithful. He didn't go hardly any when we first married. Never. He would make sure that we got there. He never interfered with anything I wanted to do or anything the boys wanted to do. And then after Kim died, he came back and was baptized and was faithful for a pretty good while. It was kind of funny because about 4 years ago, Robbie and Laura moved in to our house. They built a house across the road from us. And, of course, we would all be getting up. We're getting ready to go to church on Sunday morning, and Lily would say, Granddaddy, are you not going? And he'd say, well, not today, Dad, honey. And then it wasn't long till he got to getting up and getting ready, too. So, I think it was... But this time has been so much different than any other time, maybe, that he's come to church, because before I think he did it for me. And this time he's doing it for him.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I told him. I said, you don't go to church for me. Don't ever go to church for me. I said, I would love it and I'd appreciate it, but that's not helping you.
Right.
So.
Well, and it is, I'll say as an outsider looking in, it's very obvious he's here because he wants to be.
Right.
And so, again, you can't help but see the hand of God through all of this.
Yeah.
You got married at a very early age. You have this early tragedy in your life, and probably at that time wondering where God is and why God would allow something so dramatic or traumatic to happen. You have two healthy boys along the way, and now they are grown. They have families of their own. You even go to church together with one of your sons and his family, and you start looking back now in retrospect, and you can see God has really been playing a part in your life all along. Sometimes it was obvious to you. Sometimes you paused and I'm sure gave him thanks for the things he was doing. Other times he was working kind of behind the scenes when you may not have even noticed it.
Right.
So whenever you think about even your work life today, you said you're looking forward to retiring. But how has God blessed you and your family through the business? You started out kind of afraid, not knowing where it would lead. How do you think God has used your family through this business experience?
Well, when we first opened the business, we thought it was going to be sports. You thought you'd be doing baseball and football and all this. If that's what you had to live on, you'd starve to death. We were very fortunate because of, I guess, me working for the newspaper. I was involved with a lot of different things in selling advertising and this type thing, and I knew a lot of people, and Roger too. So it helped us to get some businesses to start coming in, and we have grown. It's just unbelievable. And of course, our church families, they help support us. We do most of the church shirts for all the little churches around. And but it's the businesses and the schools really that pretty much keep you in business.
So all these experiences you've had, both as a little girl growing up with your mother, meeting Roger, getting married at an early age, having family, having now grandchildren, having a business that's been successful, and looking forward to a day when you can close the doors, or at least walk away, I should say. What do you think God is up to right now in your life? I know you can't look into a crystal ball and predict the future, but if you could, what do you see God up to right now in your life?
Well, I've been thinking about that, and this is kind of what I see. He's kind of freed me up a little bit to start going back to camps and advances. And so I'm looking forward. I think he's doing that so that I can maybe steer my grandchildren that way. And and with Roger going too, that helps. And that's where I see it.
Yeah.
And being able to maybe do a little bit more here that I've been wanting to do, but you can't hardly find the time to do.
Right.
So.
And I know you're very involved here with the ladies programs, and not just Ladies Day, but other ladies events around here. And I know that a lot of people, whether you recognize it or not, a lot of people here have been blessed by your encouragement and by your involvement in things like that maybe do a lot more good than you're even aware of.
Well, I hope so.
And that's another neat thing about the way God works, is sometimes he uses us to bless people and we're not even aware of it.
That's true. I think about the things that you said about, there's another one that I don't know if I can get through. Ruth, when she passed. She was a dear friend of mine.
Yeah.
And I said, I hope that they could say those things about me.
Yeah. Well, and that's the kind of life we all want to live. Is we don't necessarily need to see our name up in lights or to be famous or anything like that. We just want to feel like our life meant something to somebody, whether that's limited to our own family or maybe even to our church family. We want to feel like God uses us to bless people.
Yes.
Well, Ebbett, it's been a wonderful conversation. I want to thank you for taking time out to be with me today. You have been listening to Unveiled, a presentation of the Church Street Church of Christ in Lewisburg, Tennessee. I am Kyle Bolton, the pulpit minister at Church Street, and I would like to personally invite you to come be with us during our times of worship and Bible study together. We meet every Sunday at 9 o'clock a.m. for our morning worship, followed by Bible classes for all ages at 10:15 a.m. We meet again on Sunday evenings at 6 o'clock p.m. We also have a midweek meeting for further Bible study on Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. I would also like to invite you to tune in to this radio station every Monday through Saturday from 6:40 to 6:45 a.m. for our daily devotional program called Upreach. Thank you for listening. Have a blessed day.
In his presence there is comfort. In his presence there is peace. When we seek the Father's heart, we will find such blessed assurance in the presence of